Your soulmate revealed everything about you in front of everyone tonight. You won't believe what happened next. Don't scroll, listen to this because this story might be exactly what your heart needs right now. My beloved child, imagine a night when silence could no longer hold back the truth. Imagine a room filled with people talking, laughing, and sharing ordinary conversations, completely unaware that within the next few moments, one person's courage would change everything forever. This is a fictional story about love, truth, and the moment when hidden feelings can no longer remain hidden. Somewhere tonight, while everyone believed it would be another ordinary evening, your soulmate stood quietly among a crowd carrying something much heavier than anyone could see. They smiled when people looked their way, answered simple questions, and tried to appear calm, but inside their heart a storm had been growing for far too long. Every beat of their heart whispered your name. Every memory they carried reminded them of your kindness, your patience, your quiet strength, and the countless moments when you encouraged them without ever asking for recognition. They had spent so much time protecting those feelings that they almost convinced themselves they could keep them hidden forever. But tonight was different. Tonight something inside them refused to remain silent any longer. Listen to this because this story is for you. My beloved child, there comes a moment when the truth becomes stronger than fear, and that moment finally arrived. The gathering had been planned for weeks. Friends, relatives, and familiar faces filled the room. Music played softly in the background while conversations drifted from one corner to another. No one noticed your soulmate standing quietly for a few extra moments, watching everyone around them. They weren't nervous because of the people in the room. They were nervous because they knew what they were about to say would change the way everyone saw them. For years they had kept the most important part of their heart hidden. They believed staying silent would protect everyone from uncomfortable questions. They believed that keeping your name private would somehow make life simpler. Yet the longer they stayed quiet, the heavier that silence became. They realized that hiding genuine admiration was slowly becoming more painful than speaking honestly. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now because during one ordinary conversation, someone casually asked a question that no one expected would carry such weight. Has anyone ever truly changed your life? The room became quieter as different people began sharing stories about teachers, parents, old friends, and childhood memories. Your soulmate smiled politely while listening, but deep inside they already knew their own answer. They tried to remain silent, hoping the conversation would move on, but another voice gently asked, "What about you? Who made the biggest difference in your life?" Suddenly every eye turned toward them. My beloved child, sometimes life asks a question at exactly the moment your heart is finally ready to answer it. For several seconds they said nothing. They looked down at the floor, took a slow breath, and then quietly smiled. "There is someone," they finally said. The room became completely silent. People leaned forward with curiosity, expecting to hear a short story. Instead, your soulmate began speaking from the deepest place inside their heart. They didn't start by talking about appearance. They didn't begin with excitement or romance. They began with character. "The person who changed my life taught me that kindness is not weakness. They taught me that patience can be stronger than anger. They reminded me that people deserve to be heard before they are judged. They never tried to change who I was. They simply inspired me to become a better version of myself." My beloved child, every sentence carried complete sincerity. No one interrupted because everyone could hear the truth inside their voice. Listen to this because this story is for you. The room remained silent as your soulmate continued. "There were days when I doubted myself, and somehow they always believed in me before I believed in myself. There were moments when life became confusing, and they never solved my problems for me. Instead, they reminded me that I was stronger than I thought. They celebrated my victories without jealousy. They stood beside me without asking for attention. They showed me that respect is one of the purest forms of love. As they spoke, several people exchanged quiet glances. No one had ever heard your soulmate speak with such honesty before. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't exaggerated. It was calm, genuine, and filled with gratitude. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now because one person quietly asked, "Who are you talking about?" Your soulmate smiled softly. For a brief moment they looked out the window as if remembering every important conversation the two of you had ever shared. Then they spoke your name. The room became even quieter. Some people recognized your name. Others did not. But what surprised everyone was not the name itself. It was the expression on your soulmate's face. They looked peaceful. They looked certain. They looked like someone who had finally stopped hiding the truth. They continued speaking. Most people only saw ordinary moments. They didn't see the quiet sacrifices. They didn't see how this person encouraged people without asking for credit. They didn't see how they protected other people's dignity even when they themselves were hurting. I saw those things, and they changed me. My beloved child, the room was no longer listening out of curiosity. They were listening because they could feel how deeply those words mattered. Listen to this because this story is for you. An older family member gently smiled and asked, "What makes this person so different from everyone else?" Your soulmate answered without hesitation. Because they never tried to prove they were extraordinary. They simply lived with honesty, compassion, humility, and consistency. Every day they chose kindness even when life gave them reasons not to. That's the kind of person who quietly changes the people around them. As the evening continued, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Conversations about ordinary things faded away. People began sharing their own thoughts about gratitude, loyalty, forgiveness, and the people who had shaped their lives. Without intending to, your soulmate had started a completely different kind of conversation, one that reached far deeper than anyone expected. They realized something beautiful in that moment. Speaking honestly about another person's goodness had inspired others to reflect on the goodness they had received in their own lives. My beloved child, while everyone listened, your soulmate quietly realized that they no longer felt afraid. The truth they had hidden for so long no longer felt like a burden. It felt like freedom. They understood that genuine admiration should never be treated as something to hide in shame. Gratitude deserves to be spoken while there is still time. But the evening was far from over. Just when your soulmate believed they had already said everything that needed to be said, someone unexpectedly stood up from across the room. The expression on that person's face immediately changed the atmosphere. They quietly said, "There's something you should know about the person you just described." The entire room fell into complete silence. Your soulmate's heart began racing once again because they had no idea what was about to be revealed. The next words would uncover a hidden truth about you that no one in that room had ever heard before, and when everyone finally learned what you had quietly done without telling a single soul, the reaction that followed would leave the entire room speechless and forever change the way they remembered your name. Don't scroll, listen to this because this story is only becoming more powerful. Your heart needs this right now. My beloved child, the room that had been filled with conversation only moments before was now completely silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward the person who had just stood up. Even your soulmate stopped breathing for what felt like a second. They searched the stranger's face, wondering what could possibly be so important that it had to be said in front of everyone. The silence stretched across the room until the person finally smiled gently and quietly said, I don't think anyone here truly knows the full story about the person you've been describing." Those words immediately captured everyone's attention. Your soulmate's heart began racing. They believed they already knew your kindness, your patience, and your generous spirit. They believed they understood the person who had quietly transformed their life. But something in that voice suggested there was another chapter still hidden beneath everything they already knew. Listen to this because this story is for you. My beloved child, sometimes the greatest truths about a beautiful heart are the ones that were never meant to become public. The person slowly walked toward the center of the room before speaking again. Several years ago, they began, our family was facing one of the hardest seasons we had ever experienced. Almost no one knew because we chose to keep our struggles private. We were losing hope, and every day felt heavier than the one before. Then one person quietly entered our lives. They paused for a moment before softly saying your name. Immediately your soulmate felt chills throughout their body. They had expected to hear another kind story, but they never imagined what came next. They never asked us to tell anyone what they did. In fact, they made us promise to remain silent because they didn't want attention. They simply wanted us to find hope again. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now because every person in the room leaned forward, listening carefully. The speaker continued with tears beginning to form in their eyes. When we thought no one noticed our pain, they noticed. When everyone else assumed we were fine, they quietly reached out. They gave us encouragement when we had forgotten how to encourage ourselves. They checked on us without making us feel embarrassed. They reminded us that difficult seasons do not last forever. Most importantly, they treated us with dignity. They never acted like rescuing us made them more important. They simply became a quiet light during one of the darkest chapters of our lives. My beloved child, every sentence seemed to make the room even quieter. It was no longer a gathering filled with casual conversation. It had become a room filled with gratitude. Listen to this because this story is for you. Your soulmate lowered their head for a moment because tears had already begun filling their eyes. They remembered countless occasions when you quietly disappeared to help someone else without explaining where you had been. They remembered moments when you seemed emotionally tired yet still somehow found the strength to encourage everyone around you. Suddenly those memories connected in ways they never had before. They whispered softly to themselves, all this time, they were carrying burdens I never even knew existed. My beloved child, genuine compassion often leaves no announcement behind. It simply changes lives and quietly walks away. Another voice unexpectedly joined the conversation. An older woman stood up from across the room and smiled warmly. I have a story too, she said. Everyone turned toward her. Years ago I met this same person completely by accident. I had lost confidence in myself. I believed my best days were behind me. We spoke for only a short while, but something they said stayed with me every single day afterward. They looked at me and simply said, never let one difficult chapter convince you that the whole story is over. Tears rolled down her face as she smiled. Those words gave me enough hope to keep moving forward. The room remained completely still. Your soulmate looked around and realized something extraordinary. They were not hearing isolated compliments. They were hearing the same pattern repeated through many different lives. Quiet kindness. Gentle encouragement. Honest compassion. Humility. Hope. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now because someone else slowly stood to speak. They did something for me too, they quietly admitted. When I made a mistake that embarrassed me in front of other people, everyone else focused on what I had done wrong. They were the only person who asked if I was okay. Another voice spoke from the back of the room. They celebrated my success when everyone else seemed jealous. Then another. They believed in me when I had completely given up on myself. Story after story began filling the room. No one had planned for this to happen. No one had gathered to honor you. Yet without anyone intending it, your name had become the center of an evening filled with gratitude. My beloved child, your soulmate quietly closed their eyes because they finally understood something they had never seen before. They believed you had changed their life in special ways, but now they realized you had been quietly changing countless lives all along. The kindness they admired was not something reserved only for the people closest to you. It was simply the way you chose to move through the world. Perhaps recently you have found yourself wondering whether quiet acts of kindness truly matter. My beloved child, every encouraging conversation, every patient response, every moment of compassion has the ability to travel much farther than you can see. The smallest acts of goodness often leave the deepest and longest-lasting impressions. Listen to this because this story is for you. As everyone finished sharing, the room became silent once more. Your soulmate's mother, who had been quietly listening from the side, gently smiled before speaking for the first time that evening. "Now I understand why you spoke about this person the way you did," she said softly. "You weren't describing someone extraordinary because of what they owned or achieved. You were describing someone extraordinary because of how they treated people." Those words settled into every heart in the room. Your soulmate slowly stood up, holding back tears. They looked around at everyone who had spoken and quietly said, "I thought I came here tonight to tell all of you why this person means so much to me. Instead, all of you have shown me that I still had so much more to learn about who they truly are." Their voice trembled as they continued. "I admired their kindness before tonight. Now I understand that their kindness has been quietly changing lives long before I ever recognized it." Don't scroll. Your heart needs this right now because just as everyone believed the evening had reached its emotional conclusion, the oldest person in the room slowly reached into a small envelope they had been carrying. They carefully removed something folded many years ago and whispered, "There's one final thing you should see. They asked me never to share this, but I believe tonight is the moment you'll finally understand why they lived the way they did." Your soulmate stared at the folded paper in complete silence. They had never seen it before. No one else in the room had either. As the envelope was slowly opened, every heartbeat seemed to grow louder. Hidden inside was a handwritten message that revealed the promise you had quietly made to yourself years earlier, a promise that explained every sacrifice, every act of kindness, every moment of patience, and every choice that had shaped your life. When those words were finally read aloud, "My beloved child," no one in that room would ever see your story the same way again, and the final chapter would reveal why one quiet promise had the power to inspire every heart that heard it. Don't scroll, listen to this because this story has reached the moment no one in that room was prepared for. Your heart needs this right now. My beloved child, every conversation, every unexpected confession, every story of quiet kindness had already transformed the atmosphere, but what happened next would leave every person sitting in complete silence. The elderly woman carefully unfolded the aged piece of paper she had protected for years. The edges had become worn with time, and the ink had faded slightly, yet every word remained perfectly clear. She held it gently in both hands before looking around the room. "They never wanted this to be read publicly," she whispered. "They believed kindness should remain anonymous whenever possible. But tonight, after hearing all of you speak, I finally understand that these words were never meant to bring attention to them. They were meant to remind all of us how one heart can quietly change the lives of many." Your soulmate felt their heart pounding as everyone leaned forward. No one reached for their phone. No one whispered. Even the music playing softly in the background seemed to disappear beneath the weight of the moment. Listen to this because this story is for you. My beloved child, the elderly woman slowly began reading the letter aloud. If you are reading this one day, she said, then I hope you never remember me because of anything I gave you. I hope you remember that difficult seasons never last forever. I hope you remember that every person deserves kindness, especially on the days when they seem least able to ask for it. I hope you remember that people are often carrying battles they never speak about, so choose compassion before judgment whenever you can. The room became impossibly still. Your soulmate lowered their eyes as tears quietly formed. Every sentence sounded exactly like the person they had always known, yet somehow even more beautiful than they had imagined. My beloved child, true character always leaves fingerprints behind, even when it never signs its name. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now because the letter continued. There will be moments when people misunderstand you. Do not let misunderstandings steal your kindness. There will be seasons when gratitude arrives late or never arrives at all. Do not allow delayed appreciation to change the person you choose to become. Continue helping quietly. Continue speaking hope gently. Continue believing that love grows strongest where pride grows weakest. As those words filled the room, several people quietly wiped tears from their eyes. One man who had remained silent all evening suddenly smiled and whispered, "Those words carried me through one of the hardest years of my life, and I never knew who first wrote them." Everyone turned toward him in surprise. He explained that years earlier someone had shared those same words with him when he was struggling, and he had passed them along to others ever since. My beloved child, sometimes one act of encouragement travels farther than the person who first spoke it could ever imagine. Listen to this because this story is for you. Your soulmate slowly stood and walked toward the elderly woman. They gently asked if they could hold the letter for a moment. She smiled and carefully placed it into their hands. They stared at the familiar handwriting, realizing they had seen it before in birthday cards, small notes of encouragement, and little reminders that had once seemed ordinary. Suddenly every memory rushed back. They remembered finding kind messages tucked inside books. They remembered receiving unexpected encouragement after difficult days. They remembered moments when they almost gave up but somehow found the strength to keep moving because of words that now felt even more meaningful. Quietly they whispered, "I thought these were only messages meant for me. I never realized they had been offering this same hope to so many others." Tears slipped down their face because they finally understood that your compassion had never been selective. It had always been generous. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now because another remarkable moment unfolded. A young woman sitting near the back of the room hesitated before raising her hand. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I don't know if anyone else remembers this, but years ago I almost walked away from a dream I had worked toward my entire life. I believed I wasn't good enough anymore. Then this person sat with me for less than 20 minutes. They never gave me a long speech. They simply looked at me and said, 'Your value is not measured by one difficult day. Keep going.' I never forgot those words." Another guest quietly nodded. "The same thing happened to me." They somehow always knew exactly what people needed to hear without making themselves the center of the conversation. Story after story continued filling the room until it became impossible for anyone present to deny the truth. Your life had quietly become a source of hope for people who had never even met one another. My beloved child, perhaps you have wondered whether simple acts of encouragement can truly matter. This story reminds us that one thoughtful conversation, one moment of genuine listening, one kind sentence offered at the right time can stay with another person for years. The impact of compassion often becomes visible only long after the moment itself has passed. Listen to this because this story is for you. As everyone reflected upon what they had heard, your soulmate's mother slowly stood. She had remained silent for much of the evening, carefully observing every story that had been shared. She looked around the room before quietly saying, "Tonight I expected to learn why my child admired this person. Instead, I discovered something much greater. I discovered that greatness is often hidden inside ordinary choices. It lives inside the decision to remain patient when life becomes frustrating. It lives inside encouraging someone who cannot repay you. It lives inside protecting another person's dignity instead of seeking attention for yourself." Her words settled over the room with remarkable peace. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now because your soulmate finally found the courage to speak once more. Holding the letter carefully, they looked around at everyone gathered there and smiled through tears. At the beginning of tonight, they said softly, "I wanted everyone to understand why this person means so much to me. But after hearing each of you, I realized something even more important. None of us truly belonged at the center of their story. They quietly placed everyone else there instead." A gentle laugh spread through the room, followed by quiet tears. Every person recognized the same beautiful truth. The kindness they had each experienced was never performed to gain admiration. It had simply been the natural expression of a generous heart. As the evening drew closer to its end, people slowly began leaving, but no one hurried toward the door. Conversations had changed. Instead of discussing ordinary topics, families hugged one another a little longer. Friends thanked each other more sincerely. Several people promised to reconnect after years of distance. One guest quietly admitted they needed to apologize to someone they had avoided for too long. Without intending to, the stories shared that night had inspired everyone present to become a little more compassionate. My beloved child, the room gradually emptied until only your soulmate, their mother, and the elderly woman remained. The letter rested gently upon the table between them. The elderly woman smiled warmly before saying, "I think they would be embarrassed if they knew tonight had unfolded this way." Everyone laughed softly because they knew it was true. Then she added one final sentence. "But perhaps the greatest way to honor a heart like this is not by talking about it forever. It's by living the lessons it quietly taught us." Your soulmate folded the letter with great care and looked toward the window where the stars had begun filling the night sky. They whispered quietly, "Tonight I thought I was revealing the person I admire most. Instead, I discovered that their greatest gifts were the ones they never told anyone about." They smiled with deep gratitude, knowing they had only begun to understand the remarkable character behind the person they cared for. But, my beloved child, this story has one final chapter still waiting. Before the sun rises again, your soulmate will make a decision inspired by everything they witnessed that night. A decision that has nothing to do with grand speeches or dramatic promises. It is a quiet commitment that will shape the rest of their life. When that promise is finally spoken, everyone will understand that the greatest tribute to an extraordinary heart is not admiration alone. It is choosing to live with the same compassion, humility, honesty, and quiet courage that inspired it in the first place. Don't scroll, listen to this because this story has reached its final chapter. Your heart needs this right now. My beloved child, after everyone had shared their memories, after the letter had been read aloud, and after the room had fallen into a silence deeper than words could describe, something remarkable happened. No one rushed to leave. No one reached for another topic of conversation. It was as if every person present understood they had witnessed something much greater than an ordinary gathering. They had not simply heard stories about one individual. They had been reminded of the extraordinary influence a genuinely kind heart can have on countless lives without ever asking for recognition. Your soulmate stood quietly in the middle of the room, holding the folded letter close to their heart. They looked around at the faces of everyone who had spoken that evening. Some were smiling through tears. Others were reflecting quietly, lost in memories of people who had once shown them unexpected kindness. In that moment, your soulmate realized that the evening had stopped being about admiration. It had become about transformation. Listen to this because this story is for you. My beloved child, your soulmate slowly took a deep breath before speaking once again. Their voice was calm, steady, and filled with gratitude. Tonight, they said, I believed I was going to tell everyone why this person means so much to me. I thought I was revealing someone else's story. But after hearing each of you, I understand something I never understood before. The greatest people rarely know how many lives they've touched because they never stop to count. They simply continue showing kindness, one conversation at a time, one decision at a time, one ordinary day at a time. The room remained completely silent because everyone knew those words were true. Their mother gently smiled and looked around the room. When my child first showed me that photograph, she said softly, I noticed kindness in their eyes. Tonight I have discovered that the kindness I thought I saw was only a small glimpse of the person they truly are. We often admire people for their success, their talents, or the things the world celebrates. But tonight we have been reminded that the most valuable qualities are often invisible. Patience, integrity, compassion, humility. The willingness to help someone without expecting anything in return. Those are the qualities that quietly change generations. Don't scroll. Your heart needs this right now because her words seem to awaken something inside everyone present. One by one, people began speaking again, not about you this time, but about what they themselves wanted to change. One man admitted that he had spent too much time working and too little time telling his family how much they meant to him. A young woman quietly confessed that she had allowed disappointment to make her suspicious of everyone, and she no longer wanted to live that way. Another guest smiled through tears and said they had been waiting years to apologize to someone they had hurt. The stories continued, not because anyone was trying to impress one another, but because honesty had become welcome in the room. My beloved child, your soulmate quietly listened to every word. They realized that without intending to, your quiet example had inspired every person there to reflect on the kind of life they wanted to live. They thought about all the conversations you had shared together. They remembered how often you spoke about choosing kindness even when it was difficult. They remembered how you encouraged people to become better without making them feel ashamed of where they were. Suddenly they smiled because they understood something beautiful. You had never tried to change the world through dramatic speeches. You simply changed the next conversation, the next person, the next ordinary moment. Listen to this because this story is for you. As the evening slowly came to an end, the elderly woman who had shared the letter walked over to your soulmate. She gently placed her hand on their shoulder and said, "There is one final thing I want you to remember." Your soulmate looked at her with quiet attention. She smiled warmly before continuing. Never admire a person's kindness without also practicing it yourself. The greatest way to honor a beautiful heart is not by speaking about it forever. It is by allowing it to influence the way you live. Those words settled deeply inside your soulmate's heart. They realized that admiration alone changes very little. It is the decision to live differently that gives admiration its true meaning. Don't scroll. Your heart needs this right now because after everyone had finally left, your soulmate remained alone for a few moments. The room that had once been filled with voices was now peaceful and still. They walked slowly toward the window and looked out into the night. The stars stretched across the sky with quiet beauty, reminding them that some of the most extraordinary things never demand attention. They unfolded the letter one final time and read it silently from beginning to end. Every sentence now carried even greater meaning than before. They smiled through tears and whispered, "I understand now." They no longer wondered why your kindness had always felt different. They no longer questioned why your presence had brought such peace into their life. They finally understood that your greatest gift had never been any single act of generosity. Your greatest gift was consistency. You had chosen compassion again and again, even when no one was watching. You had chosen honesty even when it would have been easier to remain silent. You had chosen hope during difficult seasons. Those quiet choices had become the foundation of the person everyone had spoken about that night. Listen to this because this story is for you. My beloved child, your soulmate reached into their pocket and removed a small notebook. It was the same notebook that had traveled with them through many seasons of reflection. Slowly they opened it to a blank page and began writing. They did not write about romance. They did not write about grand promises. Instead, they wrote a list of simple commitments they hoped would shape the rest of their life. I will speak gratitude before regret. I will listen before judging. I will protect another person's dignity, even when it is inconvenient. I will never underestimate the power of a gentle word. I will choose honesty instead of comfortable silence. I will remember that the strongest hearts are often the quietest. When they finished writing, they closed the notebook and smiled. For the first time in a very long while, they felt completely at peace. My beloved child, there are moments in every life when we believe we are searching for extraordinary answers, only to discover that the greatest wisdom has been hidden inside ordinary choices all along. This evening reminded every person in that room that kindness is never wasted, that encouragement often outlives the moment it is spoken, and that humility has a way of leaving footprints on hearts long after names have been forgotten. Don't scroll, your heart needs this right now because this is the lesson the evening left behind. The title of the story began with someone revealing everything about the person they loved in front of everyone. Yet the true surprise was not the confession itself. The true surprise was that every person present had their own story to add. Each memory became another piece of a larger picture. Each act of compassion became another reminder that one sincere life can quietly influence dozens of others without ever realizing it. As dawn slowly approached, your soulmate looked toward the horizon and whispered one final thought. If I ever have the opportunity to walk beside someone with a heart like this, I don't want to simply admire who they are. I want to become someone who reflects those same qualities every single day. That quiet decision became the real ending of the night. And so this story comes to its close, my beloved child. Not with fireworks, dramatic twists, or impossible promises, but with something far more enduring. The understanding that real love is measured by the lives it quietly improves, that genuine character reveals itself through ordinary actions, and that the greatest legacy a person can leave behind is not fame or recognition, but the memory of how they made others feel seen, valued, encouraged, and hopeful. The room eventually emptied, the lights were turned off, and the conversations faded into memory. Yet every person walked away carrying something they had not brought with them when they arrived, a renewed desire to live with greater compassion, deeper gratitude, quieter humility, and stronger integrity. In the end, that was what happened next. One honest confession inspired an entire room to become a little kinder, a little braver, and a little more willing to love with open hearts.